Process analysis. The hype to do this, man. The purpose of process analysis is to assess process for its efficiency and effectiveness, as well as its ability to identify opportunities for change. Now, what is the description? Process analysis is used for various purposes, including recommending a more efficient and effective process, voila, determining the gaps between the current and future state of a process, of course, we're analyzing the process, understanding factors to be included in a contract negotiation, understanding how data and technology are used in a process, and analyzing the impact of pending change to a process. We're analyzing a fucking process. What are the factors of a process? In, out, what changes, how it affects the out, what changes in the in that changes the out in the process. A number of frameworks and methodologies exist. Wow, it's a lot of description, man. I don't know, at one point I felt like description seems to be an interesting thing going on. So a number of frameworks and methodologies exist to focus on the process analysis and improvement methods, such as Six Sigma and Lean. Methods of process improvement include value stream mapping, statistical analysis, and controlled process simulation, benchmarking, and process frameworks. Common changes made to processes in order to improve them include reducing the time required to complete a task or tasks in process, modifying interfaces and handoffs between roles and organizational units, efficiency, right? Yeah. Automating steps that are more routine or predictable and increasing the degree of automation in the decision-making required by the process. When analyzing a process, business analysts look for how the process adds or creates value for the organization, how the process aligns to organizational goals and strategy, and to what degree the process is and needs to be efficient, effective, repeated, measured, controlled, used, and transparent, and how the requirements for the solution cover the future state process and its external stakeholders, including customers. I got lost in this one. How the process adds, creates value to the organization, mumbo jumbo. Not mumbo jumbo. Mumbo jumbo means just like random shit. This is actually good shit, but it's just shit that we know. How the process aligns to organizational goals and strategy. How it aligns to organization goals and strategy. What degree the process is and needs to be efficient, effective, repeated, measured, controlled, used, and transparent. Yeah, because sometimes we over-optimize and sometimes we kind of like, we don't give enough attention for the things that matter. And how the requirements for a solution cover the future state process and its external stakeholders, including customers. Khoniki, what are the elements? Identify gaps and areas to improve. Identifying gaps and areas to improve helps to identify what areas are in scope for analysis. Industry-specific models and process frameworks may be useful in this. We identify gaps between current and desired future state. We identify that what gaps and areas are value and non-value added. Understand pain points and the challenges of the process from multiple points of view. Understand opportunities to improve the process from multiple points of view. Align the gaps and the areas to improve with the strategic direction of the organization, and understand the relationship of the gaps and areas to improve the changes in the enterprise. So we're kind of comparing a lot here, right? Because the gaps between current and future, the gaps, areas, and value and non-value added. Understanding pain points and the challenges of the process from multiple points of view. Understand opportunities to improve or process from multiple points of view. Align the gaps and areas to improve the strategic direction of the organization. Understand the relationship of the gaps and areas to improve the changes in the enterprise. Understanding the relationship, I think, is one of the most important one, but ultimately, like, you kind of like see, like, you know, is this contributing or not, right? We're still at the analysis state. So identifying the root cause of the gaps and the improvement areas ensures that the solution addresses the right gap and area. When identifying the root cause, business analysts understand there may be multiple root causes, the input leading the gap or area of improvement, who the right people are to identify the root cause, and the current measurements and motivators in place for owning the performing the process. Right, man. When you take a break, don't put something in your head, because now I'm thinking of that kind of shit. Okay, so let's go back. Identifying gaps and areas to improve. There's a lot of comparison basically happening, and you compare in different basically dimensions. Well, ultimately, there's a relationship. There's value and no value. There's now and then. There's can we do better? What other options do we have? Those are basically where gaps kind of like could exist. We're talking right, and then you identify the root cause, which is basically that there could be multiple root causes. It's the inputs leading to the gap or the area of improvement, who the right people are to identify the root cause, and the current measurements and motivators in place for those owning performing the processes. We need to generate and evaluate options is also part of the setup, because we have to be creative in what are the things that we could do in the future. Generating options and alternative solutions to solve for the gap or area of improvement helps the team evaluate and see different points of view for improving the process. It is important for stakeholders to be involved in identifying the impact, feasibility, and value of the proposed solution relative to alternative options. And the common methods are SIPOC, is a process analysis method that originates in the Six Sigma methodology. It's used to look at the process and understand suppliers' inputs, process outputs, customers, and the process being analyzed. See, suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers. It provides a simple overview of the process and shows the complexity. And it's kind of like a chart, right? This does this, and this, and this, and this. That works. Another one is value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is a process analysis method used in lean methodologies. Value stream mapping involves in diagramming and monitoring of inputs and application points for processing those inputs. Starting from the front end of the supply chain, at each stage, the value stream map gauges the wait time for the inputs and the actual processing time at the application points, also known as conversion times. At the end of supply chain, the value stream map depicts the logistics of contribution. So they basically track, right? They track what happens from A to Z and how value is exchanged. So there's input, output, input, output. This one is a lot more, the value stream mapping is more systemized approach. Instead of who are the people playing, it's what happens at every basically corner, right? The on-page picture of all steps involved in the end-to-end process, including both value-adding and non-value-adding waste elements. Where supplier, customer, tick, 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 tick to the customer, and activity tasks, data, active process, activity tasks, the different process. It's all of this is one process, but the different parts of the process. So they approach it from a system. And what are the considerations? Well, strengths ensures solutions address the right issue, minimizing waste. Many different techniques and methodologies can be used and provide teams with great flexibility in approach. And what are the limitations? Can be time consuming. There are many techniques and methodologies in process analysis. It can be challenging to decipher which to use and how rigorously to follow them, given the scope of the purpose. And many proven effective at process involvement and knowledge and decision-intensive processes. Some processes don't need to be touched. If I'm not mistaken, Elon Musk basically once said, one of the biggest mistakes engineers fall into is basically optimizing for something that doesn't need optimization, right? Yeah, so most of the time what we do, we end up kind of looking at a whole lot of processes within the processes that are happening, and we lose track of what we're trying to do overall. Yay! Next up is process modeling.